Many books inspire, teach, and take us on incredible journeys we only dream of. But the merit of some books is to cause us to discuss, ponder, debate, and wonder. Books like that are often tagged controversial. One of such books is There Was a Country, written by the grandmaster of African literature, the late Professor Chinua Achebe, who passed on Thursday, the 21st of March, 2013, and was buried on Thursday, 23rd of May, 2013. No matter our personal preferences and biases, Achebe's iconic place in the history of modern African literature is secure. His last book, There Was a Country, has turned out to be one of the most controversial books ever written on modern-day Nigeria. It was Achebe's personal memoir of the Biafra War. It was praised by some, but condemned by others. It has in many ways reopened old wounds and exposed the ethnic divide lines in Nigeria. In today's episode, we invited Kumi Odufuye and Chud Jideowo, two accomplished young Nigerian leaders, entrepreneurs, and book critics to review this intriguing book. Also, we'll be showing you some interesting clips from two children events we visited. Please join us after this break.
You have the speed. You will pass the whole gang and you will soon take the lead. Wherever you fly, you'll be the best of the best. Wherever you go, you will top all the rest. Except when you don't, because sometimes you won't. I'm sorry to say so, but sadly it's true that bang-ups and hang-ups can happen to you. You can get all hung up in a prickly perch and you gang will fly on and you'll be left in a lurch.
It opens with a gate of art. Moves into windows of creativity.
She finds the only English word she knows from somewhere hidden in the belly of a 4'9" body, and instead of I won't get, she reads us with bye-bye.
Branches into rooms of color. And ends with a roof of imagination. Walk into Art House. The pieces all come together at 9:30 p.m. every Saturday. Art House, life is art.
Well, thank you for coming on the Channels Book Club.
Thank you for having us.
Kumi, yes. What do you think about Chinua Achebe?
Chinua Achebe, well, so much has been said about Professor Achebe, since he passed on, living and even in his death. Great mind, intelligent. It's been described, so many things have been said about him. I mean, just in his accomplishments, the book Things Fall Apart. You have a book that has been translated to over 50 languages, sold over 8 million copies, which he wrote when he was only 26 years old. I mean, that in itself is a feat. I read somewhere that Things Fall Apart is next to the Bible and the Quran, of the top 30 books. It's one of the most translated books in literature. I mean, that's an accomplishment in any feat. So I think he was a great mind, great man. Got a scholarship to study medicine, but because of his passion, went ahead to do literature. So Chinua Achebe, Professor Achebe, was an amazing, wonderful intellect of our time.
What do I think of him?
Yes.
It's a difficult question to ask. At a point in my life, I thought Chinua Achebe was God. I mean, it was part of it also defined by how many books I'd read at the time. And now there's a debate about whether Achebe is, there's a debate. It has been endless, whether he's the father of African literature. And I say to the extent that he seemed to have given courage to a new a new kind of storyteller, you know, not encumbered by the way stories were told before him, the kinds of stories that were told, you know, and even his work with the African Writers Series and all of that. You know, I would easily call him the father of modern African literature. It's not a cliche. It's not something that I heard from somebody else. It's something that I sensed from the body of work that he created, and how you could almost define Nigerian literature as before things fall apart, African literature before things fall apart, and after things fall apart. You know, his cumulative achievements were of such a quality that you have to define him by something great. You know, he wasn't just another author. You know, he wasn't just another storyteller. He wasn't just another African artist. He was something of all of this and more. You know, he defined at his time, you know, if you read history, if you read his peers, what it meant to be a defiant African voice at the time that he came up. You know, there was something distinguished about him, something, you know, something that made you almost proud, that you had a story that, when you say you are black and proud, for instance, there was a story that backed it up, so to speak. You could say, well, why are you black and proud? Well, read, things fall apart. Well, read, no longer at ease. Well, read, this is it. This is why I'm black and proud. And I wasn't alive at those times. So that's the sense that I get from that, you know. So it's difficult for me to define Achebe. I mean, some of us have called him the father of modern African literature, because we're trying to find that word, that phrase that captures, you know, what he signifies. So to me, he's all of that and even more.
Okay, there was a country. What do you think? Too provocative, too controversial, necessary or unnecessary?
I don't know that you can say that any man's story is unnecessary. I tweeted immediately, I said, this book has overpowered me. You know, I mean, I really admire people who could rush and write a review immediately after. It was like you arrive at a point in history and you see things and you don't know what to think. You just know that you shouldn't be talking at this point in time. You know, it is a great book, and again, great is a very common word. You know, I say great because I can't find the word. It was such a fine story told with such a purity of anger, and it wasn't a loud anger. It wasn't, you know, it was. You know, I can imagine Achebe making his point. You know, Achebe probably is the kind of person who will say you're an idiot. You know, and I just think I'm a very big idiot. You know, and his voice isn't raised, his arms aren't gesticulating. He's making a firm, strong, loud point without having to follow it with aggression. And that's what I thought about the book. I thought, wow, he just said so many important things in such measured tones, in such, you know, it's such an important book, you know, about colonialism, about Nigeria's independence, and indictment on our founding fathers with one huge brush, about our character as Nigerians, about the figures that we have deified from Azikiwe to Awolowo, you know, about himself as an author emerging at the time that he did, questions that he had never asked in public, at least as much as I had seen, about the nature of African literature. What kind of books should Africans write? Can you write about birds and the bees when you are facing monumental issues as an African? You know, there were so many important things. You know, the book overpowered me. You know,
Kumi, from a political and historical perspective, how would you judge there was a country?
Okay, well, I'm not a politician, but my own opinion. To add to what you had said, for a very long time, I was trying to get a book on Biafra War. I realized that over 90 books have been written about the story of Biafra. I mean, from Obasanjo's accounts to Frederick Forsyth to so many other authors. For me, from a political view, I think it's a book that we need to learn from, because there's so many mistakes that we're still making today. The insurgencies, the killings in the north are things that are still happening today. Issues of corruption are things that are still happening and they're still glaring today. If we can't learn from the mistakes that we have made, then how do we move forward as a people? So for me, there was a country, obviously, yes, Chinua Achebe was biased. He had no choice but to be biased because he was involved in the war. He was an Igbo man. His best friend went forth and died in the war. His family, I mean, they bombed his house. If not for the fact that his family had got to go and visit, I think, an alien parent or something, they would have possibly died. So, I mean, there's that bias in it. And there's that, friction, obviously, from the experiences that he's had. But yes, it's necessary. It's a very necessary book. It's a very, very necessary part of our history. We need to continue to repeat these stories about Biafra and keep on, letting people know about Biafra. I was saying earlier, before, when I heard about Ojukwu, I used to think that Ojukwu was this guy that started this war, this troublemaker that started this war. But if you look at it and you look at the history, because I also try not to be biased, I'd read Professor Achebe's accounts, and at the same time, I tried to listen to other people's accounts, and I did a little bit of more research on my own. And the truth of the matter is, I don't think Ojukwu had a choice. I mean, there were people, millions of Igbos are being slaughtered. They had to come home. So fine, okay, just leave us on our own. Let us exist on our own, and you guys do what you guys need to do. So that, in its sense, shouldn't be a problem. But the accounts of what happened afterwards is what I now have a problem with. I mean, you know that you couldn't win this war. You know that. I mean, stories of people going to go and fight in a war. Two guys are carrying one gun. Is when one guy dies, I pick up his gun and I move forward. It's clear that you can't win. It's clear that the Nigerian government is getting funding or aiding from the British government or from wherever. And you're still here trying to insist that, okay, I'm still going to go ahead and move forward despite the fact that people are dying of starvation. That, I don't totally agree. But I agree with the essence of the fact that, yes, it was necessary at the time to take a stand for the people. I'm not Igbo, I'm a Yoruba guy. But it was necessary for people to take a stand. I think we need more people to take a stand even now as way things are happening now, because that's the only way that you really get any form of difference in this country. So yes, it's a brilliant book, awesome book. In terms of politics, we need to learn from it. In terms of history, we need to continue to remind ourselves so that we don't make those mistakes again. We need more stories. I like what Amanda Diches had done with her own book. We need more stories like that. You know so much about the American culture. I think I'm dragging because you know stories about John F. Kennedy, you know stories about Abraham Lincoln, because they celebrate it. They tell it in their movies. People hear about it. People know about it. But everybody doesn't want to. They don't want to talk about Biafra. It's like that thing that let's not really discuss. But it's necessary that we don't make those mistakes. So we can teach our children that this is what happened. Not just for the fact that we're where we are for whatever reason, but we're here because of the mistakes that we have made. And we need to learn from those mistakes.
What do you make of the heated reactions to the book? There have been a lot of reviews, a lot of debates, and mostly heated. What do you make of those reactions?
Honestly, I won't be honest about it. Because if I talk about my view of many of the people who reacted to the book, I would sound very arrogant to find the word. I just thought, something else, based on what he said. He said something about Chinua Achebe, it's impossible to be biased. But I disagree slightly. It is possible to not be biased or to move above your bias. Mandela did that in Long Walk to Freedom, deliberately ascribing to others a magnanimity that they didn't even possess. Even they themselves might have been shocked. Wow, I was that good. If you read one Long Walk to Freedom or letters to himself. I think Achebe deliberately descended into the field, told himself that this is no time to be the godfather or to be a legend or to be an unbiased participant. This is a time to take a stand and be criticized for my stand. He was 80-something. He could have died without this controversy. He could have died and be remembered with an afterglow. No matter how controversial you are, the last few years of your life, even Nixon died with approval ratings above 50 because then he began to make peace in the world. Achebe could have decided to do that. He deliberately, I am convinced, decided that these are not times for personal legacy to trump a national duty. I think he felt that it was his duty to stimulate the kind of reactions that we are having now, to be the source of the kind of conversations that we are having now. And there is no other person who has the gift, the perspective, the authority, the personal credibility, because he wasn't just an author, he was involved in the war, to have made these kind of conversations happen. That being said, the quality of the conversations have been very poor. This is a rich book. This is a many-layered book. This is a book that talks about so many important things. Talks about colonialism, talks about independence, talks about the personal feelings of our founding fathers, cuts down everybody from the Sardauna to Azikiwe to Awolowo, puts everybody down to size, talks about his own conflicts and admiring the British colonial teachers and pastors while detesting their imperialism. There are all kinds of important things that Achebe talked about in that book, The Place of the African Writer. And somebody decides to limit it to Yoruba and Igbo. I don't understand it. Those themes were only one of different strands of the book. The book is so big, and the conversations we're having about the book are so small. It's almost as if we deliberately decided not to pay attention. I know one of the tragedies I've heard, one commissioner in in the southwest. And you know what? There are as many ignorant commissioners as like that in the southeast as well, who said, I haven't read the book, but it's a bad book. I thought, seriously, you know, so that shows the quality. People will write entire columns. Some people who I used to respect, or who I still respect, and they would miss the entire point of the book. There was a country, it was as much, the country he was referring to is as much Biafra as it is Nigeria. You know, his sense of loss is as much about what Nigeria could have become as to what Biafra. Achebe didn't want Biafra. You know, he didn't. There was nowhere before he joined Biafra. There was nowhere where Achebe was clamoring to create a new country. There was a deep sadness in his spirit when he was leaving Lagos, to think that Lagos, which he considered his home, according to him, was no longer his home. There were important emotions Achebe was writing about. You know, I think we do ourselves, not him, a disservice with the kinds of controversies that we try to limit his book with.
Kumi, I know you mentioned something earlier, but I want to take you back to it. Have we discussed the Biafra issues enough, or should we move on?
Well, no, I don't think we've discussed it enough. You find an issue of, I don't want to help this person because, oh, he's a Yoruba man, or he's an Igbo man, or this guy cannot do this job, not necessarily because of the fact that he is from wherever or he's qualified to do it, but because he's not from my town, he's not from my tribe. Something that Fashola did, which I really admire. He took an Igbo man and made him a commissioner in Lagos State, when Lagos State is predominantly Yoruba, predominantly Muslims. But he said, look, this is somebody that can do the job, and that is where we need to get to. Because even I admire Obasanjo's, administration, because a lot of people may dispute it. He had Nuru Bad in EFCC because this guy can do the job. He had Rufai in Ministry of in Abuja because these people can deliver, not because he's from this side or he's from that side. So I think the Biafra issue boils down to every issue. We still have corruption till today. We still have issues of Boko Haram, which is still leading to the same corruption issue. Issues of Niger Delta, listening to is an outpour of the corruption issue. So if you don't address this major war, that happened, which affects every single thing, then we're never ever going to move forward as a people. So no, I don't think the Biafra story has been told enough. I think we should continue to sing it. I think maybe the band should do a Biafra song, involve people, get people to listen to it, get people to know about it, because that's the only way we're going to make a difference or a change, so that we don't make the same mistakes over and over again.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much,
The crowd here at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, Lagos, is gathered with mixed feelings. They are mourning the loss of one of their own, a man many regard as a father of African literature. They are also celebrating the life of one of their own, Professor Chinua Achebe. Even the rain knows and joins in the celebration, and the accolades pour in as well.
He has achieved immortality. I mean, we talk about Shakespeare as if he lived yesterday, yet he's not been around for a very, very, very long time. In the same way, Achebe has achieved immortality. I expect that he will be around 1,000 years from now because of the written word. I think the key is the lesson that we take away from this. The people who scramble for position and think that being called governor, president, and stuff is what makes you. We'll find that most of them disappear from consciousness within a few years of leaving those positions. Whereas somebody like Achebe, who never had any position, will not be forgotten. This is immortality.
Chinua Achebe, as a human being who was highly principled and lived by truth and principle. So it's in that regard that I respect him very, very highly. Even though, as an author, he was a distinguished, world-recognized author.
The man, Chinua, may be gone, but his legacy will remain on our shelves for a long time.
it be an evening star shines down upon you. May it be when darkness falls, your heart will be true. You walk alone or how far you are from home.
Worship him now.
From one nation to another, there must be a meeting point. Their ideas may be different, but they must work to agree on what's best for the people. Diplomatic Channel untangles the discussions to bring out what's really important. Because it is our world, and it's our right to know how their decisions affect it.
Not surprisingly, our book of the week is There Was a Country by Chinua Achebe. As controversial as it is, it's an interesting book to read and ponder upon. Get yourself a copy, read it, and let's know what you think.